All right, Gentlemen Badass Podcast coming to you live, not live, but coming to you from 88 Tactical here in Omaha, Nebraska. And today we've got a special guest. We've got the Punisher with us today. At least he looks a lot like the Punisher. We've got Rob Wiley with us. Rob, thanks for joining us.
It's good to be here, and I am not John Bernthal.
Tell us that story about that picture you saw of yourself with the wall of guns.
Oh yeah, somebody sent me a photo when they were doing Punisher season 1, and John Bernthal had a photo where there was a wall of guns behind him, and his face is at the bottom of the photo, and he's got really short hair in the photo like I do now. And somebody sent it to me, and it looked like someplace I'd have been and some kind of thing I'd have done. And I'm looking at the photo. It took me a good 3 minutes to go, where the fuck was I when I took this photo? Who took this photo of me? And then I realized, oh fuck, it's John Bernthal. It's better now than the first 2 seasons of The Walking Dead.
Okay.
Because I would rather be known as the Punisher than the rapey guy on The Walking Dead, Shane. When that was going on, I would literally, like, every other day, I'd be in, because that's when that show was just huge, just blowing up. And I'd be in a grocery store or something, and there'd be, like, some girls, 2 lanes down, and they're whispering and pointing and giggling, and I would just literally turn to them and go, I look like Shane. They go, oh my God, yes! So I get that a lot. Yes, I look like John Bernthal. I am not John Bernthal.
Well, there are definitely worse people you could look like.
Oh yeah.
So I wouldn't complain too much.
He's got a broken, fucked up nose like me, and he still apparently does quite well.
Sexy.
So.
Yeah. So Rob is a member of the SWAT team. He's a police officer, and he's a former fighter for Mick. And so we've got plenty of stories, I think, that we can talk about today. First off, though, let's just kind of start with your background. We like to get an idea of where you came from, what you were like as a kid, any of those funny, crazy stories, if you can think of them off the top of your head.
I was born and raised in Omaha. I grew up in a small part of Omaha called Benson, which is kind of a blue-collar community. Now it's more of a hippie bar district, but back then it was very blue collar. I must say I went to my dad does auto upholstery. My mom was a school teacher, so very middle income. They went to private school. St. Pius is the school I went to, which we would have probably done financially better as a family if my mom wasn't so hardcore about me and my siblings going to that private school. So money was tight, but that was because they were sending us to a private school. So I have one older brother who's 2 years older and one younger sister, 2 years younger, and a middle child. That's about it. I was in Boy Scouts. Liked to camp a lot as a kid. Liked to run around, play Army.
Did you make Eagle?
No, I didn't.
No?
I didn't because I got sent off the track of becoming an Eagle Scout because I became enthralled with something else, namely fighting.
Yeah, okay.
That's actually a pretty good story. We can tell that one. But let's see.
Is your dad still involved in the Scouts?
Yeah.
Because he was.
My dad was one of the Scout leaders.
Yeah.
And it was a big deal for my dad that me and my brother be in Boy Scouts. And it wasn't like, he wasn't so hardcore about us making Eagle Scout as just, learning wilderness stuff and how to make a fire and just, kind of how to become a man, whatever, It was a good organization. So I was involved with that, and a guy I was friends with there, his name was James Padani, friends with him to this day. His uncle, Kurt Padani, was Mick's partner at the time at the gym in Benson, and it was called the Midwest Fighting Arts Academy, I believe, at the time. Yep. So James goes, hey, my uncle just opened this gym. Let's go. You want to go try out some lessons? It just opened up. So I'm like, what the hell? So I go there one night, and James was supposed to be with me, but the last minute he cancels. So I go by myself to this place, and it wasn't a big gym. It was very Spartan, okay? So they didn't have luxuries like heat and air conditioning.
Charge extra for that.
Yeah. And I remember my first day there, I met Mick, and he had his Irish accent was thicker back then, and he had snakeskin boots, and I think white stonewashed jeans, and I mean, forget whatever else he was wearing, but he was
had a mullet.
Yeah, he was kind of off-putting. You're like,
so we're saying like basically an Irish Patrick Swayze. Man.
Yeah,
I like thinking more like an Irish Chuck Norris, but I mean,
and I was kind of like, who is this fucking guy, and literally the first lesson we ever had, it was just him and I, and the bag wasn't even hung up. It was just leaning against the wall, and he would just hold it. It was a big kind of sandbag. And he taught me day one, stand this way. Here's how you throw a leg kick. All we did for 30 minutes was throw leg kicks. And I'm coming from no background at all. I wasn't particularly talented at any sport. I played baseball, basketball, all sports you do as a kid, but I wasn't ever really particularly talented in any of them. I think a lot of it is I'm left-handed, but I do most sports right-handed, so I don't really throw a ball worth of shit with either one. I'm basically ambidextrous. So here I am trying, kickboxing, and it was just it was different, but something about it spoke to me, and I could tell, like, I am not good at this, but I really enjoy it, and I really want to be good at it, and I can see a path to being good at it. And there was that first lesson, I went home, my shins were sore as hell, because back then we did a lot of shin conditioning, and obviously my shins were not conditioned for kicks.
Yeah.
And I remember going home and just being like, this is definitely something that I want to dedicate part of my life to learn how to do. So that kind of took off from there. We had these little gym cards that when you showed up, you take your card out and you put an X on the day.
Oh, yeah, I remember those things.
And
That's going way back. Yeah.
I wish I still had my card, because literally the days that weren't marked were like the gym was closed. I was a gym rat. I was there every day, just soaking it all in, learning everything I could. And back then we did Bushido karate, a lot of bare knuckle karate stuff. Mick would teach us Japanese. I mean, it was a different time. It wasn't kickboxing was like in its infancy at the time. There wasn't a lot of fights out there to be had, but we were just it was kind of like being involved at the ground level of a business that you knew was going to grow and be very successful, and you're in the infancy of it. You could just tell there was that kind of energy there. The place kind of had a family vibe to it, and a direction. And that's back when Mick was still competing. He'd do the Sabaki and the Shidokan, and so they were. It was more like you had this group of instructors who were still fighting, like they were teaching. But their primary goal was not to teach. Their primary goal was to compete at the time.
Yeah.
And they were
everyone else is along for the ride.
Right. Yeah, they were competing, and then we were just kind of like, okay. And then, they need cannon fodder to beat up on. But it was a great time. It was a tough time.
Yeah.
I mean, it was rough.
So you were kind of the type that was motivated by the pain versus scared away from the pain. Would you say that's correct? Or when you endure the right kind of adversity, it grows on you. You know what I mean? Yeah.
It just kind of, you're in kind of, you just learn to love it. And as soon as you start seeing progress, I remember, God, I got my ass kicked for a long time. And it's like that in all martial arts. You really got to just not quit and stick with it. And the first time, because you're not going to notice that you're getting better because you're always fighting up. And then the first time you actually fight somebody who is also new or not quite as good as you, and you get that, oh shit, you don't realize how far you've advanced.
Yeah.
And that first time you realize how far you've advanced, and now you can do something you never could before, and that's when the light goes on, like, oh, okay. But you have to endure to get to that point, to get to that aha moment. And I did. So then I come back, and I think there was a kickboxing class on Mondays at 7. And that was the same night as Boy Scouts. It was Mondays at 7. And it was a big day when I sat down with my old man and I said, I don't want to do Boy Scouts anymore. I want to dedicate myself to fighting. I'm not getting anything out of Boy Scouts. I was like 15. I'm done. I just want to do fighting. And it wasn't really an argument. My dad didn't really argue with me, but he was not happy. He was not happy with that decision. He was really upset.
Well, he ended up coming to the gym and talking to me.
That night?
No, shortly thereafter, and he's like, okay, so kind of, it was more just to kind of suss us out a little bit more, like what is this cult that my child has just wanted to enlist in almost? No, but he was just like, all right, he just wanted to make sure that we were all, good people and that we weren't going to turn his son into a thug, which is cool. I mean, I actually just spoke to your dad yesterday on some stuff. Like, we still stay in touch. So, I think it was good that even though maybe it wasn't what the path that he wanted. So long as you were happy and active, he was okay with it. He just wanted to know that the people that you were going to be around were all positive people, you know?
Yeah, and he was very supportive of it. He just didn't like the fact that it was taking the place of Boy Scouts. And it's kind of funny because at the time we were not wealthy. We didn't have a lot of money. The $40 a month that the gym fees was expensive for us. So Mick actually arranged for it. He let me clean the gym to pay for my dues. So I don't even know if I did. Probably didn't do a very good job, but I cleaned the gym for like the first 3 years.
You didn't.
I was
come back in on Sunday and re-clean it.
Was that just kind of like an act of generosity? Did you see potential and you wanted to make sure you could cultivate it? What do you remember? What
you know? I mean, I grew up pretty poor, and nothing was ever kind of handed to me. However, if you're willing to work hard, there was always people who would kind of invest in you or kind of take a chance on you. So I just kind of grew up that way, taking chances on people and you know, I mean, in the big scheme of things, it wasn't costing me a fortune to do it. And I've certainly been burned more than it's worked out, but I'm still not going to change what I do. But no, there was definitely some potential there. It's like he said, half of it is just showing up. You know, if you're willing to be in there night in, you know, day in, night out, and take the lumps and everything else and the uncomfortableness and that comes with learning something new, especially a combat sport where there's actual contact more often than not. You're right, that does kind of change you. It you know, makes a man out of you, I think. And so yeah, there was potential there, and figured, what the hell, let's teach this kid and teach him some responsibility too. And like, you know, he touched on, you know, I was still teaching a lot of traditional martial arts, and I've always tried to live that Bushido code. And part of that Bushido code is honoring the place that you train at. And I mean, to this day, our gym is still probably the cleanest martial arts fitness facility that you're ever going to find. And I think, you know, part of keeping the place, honoring it and keeping it kind of sacred, so to speak, is keeping it clean. Yeah. And, you know, so we try to instill that young. There's
definitely you take ownership.
Yeah.
When you're mopping mats, and I'm never too far along to not mop mats. I still mop the mats.
Oh, yeah.
It's paying respect to the place you're training at.
Well, now that I've been at the gym for quite a while, you know, one of the things that I look for in people is who's going to volunteer to mop the mats. Because honestly, back when I first started, like this wasn't a plan in my mind, but I was the guy that always mopped the mats after class. No one asked me to do it. I just I need to do it. And so I did it. And I think that's kind of where you started to notice, like, oh, you're being a little responsible with this. And
to me, it demonstrates some humility. You know, I mean, I still enjoy going into the gym late at night when there's no one around and cleaning it. And it keeps me grounded. It reminds me, like, shit, I built this place.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, there's a certain kind of humility that goes along with that, and then, you know, and you've experienced it with me, where when we travel to other gyms and they don't keep the place clean, and you're, you know, right away your respect for those coaches and those facilities kind of goes down. It's like, man, this place is making all of us better. Like, why wouldn't you keep it picked up? Why wouldn't you keep it clean? And you know, I don't really understand people who don't do it.
Well, I like the idea too of the punch card that you mentioned with the X for every day. There's an idea called the Seinfeld method. Basically, the stand-up comedian met Jerry Seinfeld, and he's like, "How do I become a better comedian?" He's like, "Well, you need to write every day. Here's how you do this: get a big wall calendar that's got the entire year on one piece of paper, and every day that you write, put an X." And then, you know, eventually, after a while, you're going to have a chain of X's, and the whole goal is to not break the chain. And so I think, like, that visual representation of, man, I've been training every day. Like, I don't want to miss tomorrow, because if I miss, then I'm going to break the chain. And I think that's almost something we should maybe look at.
Well, we have that. I mean, now it's just electronic. It's a scan card.
But this was also 1993.
Yeah, we didn't have a computer.
It was
in the gym.
barely internet.
Yeah.
So you started training. You mentioned probably 15 is when you left the Boy Scouts to start training a little more.
Yeah, and the funny thing, I'm going to add that, is my dad many years later sat down with me and he goes, you know what, I wasn't happy about the decision at the time, but looking back, he goes, that's the best decision you ever made. That was the best thing ever happened to you. And he goes, I disagreed with it.
Yeah.
So sometimes your old man doesn't know what's best for you.
Yeah. So when did you start training? When did you actually start fighting?
God, I think my first fight was when I was 15.
Yeah.
It didn't take long for me to get in the ring. And I quit counting at 30 fights. I have no idea how many times I fought. It was somewhere, I think it was less than 40.
Okay.
But I was fighting about twice a year, maybe 3 times.
More
during
than
the
that.
busy-
You're going out to Colorado a lot too.
Yeah, I fought a lot. And didn't always win. I won more than I lost, and I never got knocked out or knocked down. But I tell you, I fought a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I had a hard head and I was pretty tough. But I mean, you'd rather be known for something other than just being tough, because to prove you're tough shows that you're probably not doing that well in the ring.
No. I recently, last year, I think it was last year, I was out in Colorado and I ran into Dwayne Ludwig. And he still remembers the epic war you two had
Dwayne.
when Dwayne was an amateur. And then Dwayne went on to become obviously a world champion
really
professionally, and now
good guy, pro fighter.
A great trainer of UFC champions.
For those not super familiar with UFC, Dwayne, I think, held the record for the UFC for
Fastest
the fastest
knockout.
Yeah.
like 7 or 8 seconds.
Losing to him was probably the best thing that ever happened to me as a fighter.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I'll tell you a story, funny story, not really funny. So I fought Dwayne in the final of the Nationals, the U.S. National. Was that Muay Thai or kickboxing?
Yeah, Muay Thai.
Was it kickboxing?
Muay Thai.
I think it was kickboxing that time.
Was
might
it?
have been Muay Thai. I don't know. So anyway, the final in 1999, amateur final. And I hadn't lost in years. People would come up to me and tell me, I don't remember the last time you lost a fight. And I mean, I knew it had been a couple years ago, but I just didn't lose. And I was fighting at I think the weight class was 153 to 159. Destroyed the guy in the semis, and it's a national tournament. So you start at the regionals, then you go and you got to fight usually 2 or 3 times at the national tournament over the weekend. And here I am fighting Dwayne Ludwig, fight him in the final, lose a decision I deserved to lose. He was the better fighter that day. And it was absolutely, crushing, for a young man like me that had dedicated everything to this pursuit, and then to lose. And to lose it in a split decision, no less. It was just miserable. And over the next year, so I go up a weight class. I went to 160 to 167, I think is the next weight class up. Fought a bunch of stronger guys. I think I fought 5 times that year. Leading up to the Nationals, I lost every fight that year. I lost every fight, but I was fighting guys who were really good. And I was losing decisions. I wasn't, getting knocked out, get the shit beat out of me, but I was deserving to lose those fights. I deserved to lose them. It was tough. It was a hard year to keep plugging away. Then comes the national tournament in 2000. Go to the regional, won that. I don't remember who I fought. Go to the national tournament, win the first one, go to the final, and I got knocked out the guy in the first one with the body, needed the body, and it was it Nathan Strout?
Could have been.
Yeah, in the final, win in a split decision. One of Duke Rufus's.
Jason Strout.
Jason Strout, that's right.
Who now actually commentates in Thailand for the professional fights out there and runs Church Street Boxing Gym in New York, one of the oldest, most famous boxing gyms in New York. Yeah,
good for him. Good for him. I haven't talked to these guys ever since. But so I won in the final and won the U.S. title in a split decision against Jason, and So looking back, I tell that story to other people, other fighters I've had that just you don't think about the loss as being good for you, you know. But let me tell you, I lost in '99 against, you know, Dwayne Ludwig, and I lost every fight that year. Didn't see it, but I was getting stronger. And then I forgot to mention, I go back down a weight class. I went back down to 153 to 159, and I was at the bottom of the weight class. I was at 153 in 2000, and I just walked it. So you often don't realize it. You're getting stronger.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, they hit a lot harder. Just one weight class up, they hit a lot harder. So,
well, speaking of being tough, so if you're watching on YouTube, you might be able to see this, but you've got a scar that goes from ear to ear over the top of your head.
Yeah. Zipper.
Tell us the story about that scar.
It's kind of funny because
let me tell the story
from
the perspective of a cornerman. I remember who you're fighting.
It was July 10th of 1998, I believe, and I was on the U.S. team. We were getting ready to go fight in China, and I believe the China thing was in October. We were supposed to go fight in China. And I was fighting a guy from Edge Brown's gym from New York. And God, I can't remember the guy's name. He weighed
tall, thin, black kid?
Yeah, he weighed 168.
Yeah.
No, he was short and stout. He was kind of short. Sean something, I think. And strong guy. He was 168 and I was 150. I remember I gave up 11 pounds, so I'd have been 157. At the last minute, I had to switch fight opponents for me. And it was kind of, you know, you're going to fight this guy. He's 11 pounds heavier. And I'm like, what the hell? You know, we got to get ready for that. What's the worst that could happen? So,
he gets elbowed in the fight.
First, like, 10 seconds.
And fights to the first round, like, we don't notice it, you know. Comes down, he sits down on the stool in front of me, and I'll look, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. And it looks like someone has taken a golf ball and just smashed a divot in his forehead. And so he sits down, and I was like, oh. Are you okay? And he's like, huh? And I was like, does your head hurt? He's like, no. Why? I'm like, because you have a divot in your forehead. And he's like, no. I was like, I'm thinking, well, he seems okay. I'll just give him some water and I guess send him on his way. So he goes out next round, sits back down. I'm like, doing okay? He's like, yeah. I'm like, sure you're okay? And he's like, yeah, why? I was like, nah, got a divot in your head still, you know? So at the end of the fight, I'm like, you're sure you're okay? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, all right, well, and you know, I had more fighters to coach that night. And I was like, well, check in with me in a little bit, you know? And I'm like, your head's okay? And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. I was like, okay. So like, I don't know, half hour later, he comes, he's like, Coach, my fucking head hurts really bad. I was like, yeah, you still have a divot in your head. Like, you need to go to the hospital. Yeah. So he goes and fractured?
Yeah, fractured sinus cavity. You know, I also started getting all sorts, you know, with head injuries, you get nausea. I started throwing up. Right after. I stayed for the rest of the fights, and it just stung like hell. I mean, it stung. But it wasn't like I was clear. I was cognizant. I knew I was in a fight, and I knew exactly where we were, and I knew. I think I recall telling you in the corner. I go, no, I can beat this guy.
Yeah,
you know, I'm like, I can beat this guy. I got him. You know, because he was, as I recall, he kept grabbing me around the waist and pulling me down. I was able to break his guard and throw lots of knees. Cause that was a Muay Thai fight, and knees were my strong suit, and I was just destroying him on knees. I'm like, I can beat this guy. You know, let me finish this fight. I could tell he was thinking about stopping the fight, and I was like, I got this. So we end up going to the ER. They do an X-ray, and it was right here, kind of above here. And by then it had swollen up with swelling. You couldn't really see it anymore. And they're like, yeah, you have a fractured sinus cavity. You have a dent. You know, there's obviously between your inner skull and your outer skull, there's a gap there. Well, that gap had crushed in. And to fix it, they obviously did a surgery. They had to cut me from here to here, peel my face down, cut the bones out, and screw them back in. So I got little pieces of erector set up here that hold those bones in place, and then they heal, and they just leave the metal in there. No, I do not set off detectors, metal detectors. It doesn't do that.
So did you win that fight then?
I did.
He did.
I did.
And then
all I had to brag about is that I won the fight. It was really, you know. Yeah.
So he comes to the gym like a couple of days later, and he's got like a turban on his head. And he's like, hey, I was like, you're not training. And he's like, I'm good. I go, no, you're not. And he's like, I just went to a wedding this weekend and danced for like 3-4 hours something. And I was like, this guy's a fucking lunatic.
Honestly, though, of all the surgeries I've had 2 shoulder surgeries. I had to fix, deviated septum from several broken noses, and then that one. That was the least painful. Like recovery, I mean, the recovery's fine. You just can't get hit. You don't feel it. It's not like this part of your body moves.
Yeah.
I was fine. I mean, literally 2 days after the surgery, I felt fine. You know, it was just like, yeah, I got this big scar and stitches, and it was kind of wild because you couldn't feel anything from here up. You know, you could have just pinched my, you could have pierced my eyebrow. I wouldn't even raise it. Yeah, it wouldn't hurt me at all. But yeah, so that's kind of, that story kind of over the years has had legs. Yeah. You know, a lot of the recruits on the police department tell that story about me, and I'm like, you know, I usually
got attacked with a chainsaw.
Yeah, right. I usually embellish it a little bit, say I was attacked by a grizzly bear or something. But he fought 3 rounds with a broken head. I'm like, well, I didn't technically know how bad the injury was when I kept fighting. And, you know, in retrospect, it wasn't that bright, but it worked out for the best. So
crazy.
Yeah, oh, he's so tough. You know, whatever. You know.
So you're fighting. When did you finally decide to get into law enforcement, and how'd you go about doing that?
That's kind of a meandering story that takes us back in history a little bit. Let's see. I'm in college. Didn't really have any direction. I had tried firefighting for a little while. I was a volunteer firefighter in Bennington, where my parents lived, for a very short period of time. Took some firefighting classes. It just wasn't speaking to me. So I went to just general education and started racking out some history classes because I really love history. Particularly American history. So I was just taking those classes. Like a lot of people in college, they switched their majors like 6 times. I switched it once, just didn't know what to go to. And then September 11th happens. And you know, that was my generation. My generation was of fighting age when all that occurred. You know, that was it. And I remember being at UNO in this student lounge, watching a TV with a bunch of people watching that plane hit that second tower. In that student lounge, just the shock. And then literally 2 minutes later, my dad calls my cell phone and he goes, "Don't join the Marines." Like, that's how we started the conversation. Yeah. You know, and I said, "No, Dad, I'm going to join something." I said, "I don't know if it's going to be the Army or the Marines, but I'm going to join them, because whoever fucking did this, you goddamn well, the military's going to be putting foot to ass soon, and I want to be there to do it." It's very different. You know, for people who weren't, you know, a fight, you know, there were children back then or not even alive back then. It's hard to explain what it was like, you know, in this country to watch that happen and to take that shot. It was transforming, you know. So, and I don't like being that guy who would be like, yeah, I was going to join the military, but, you know, I was going to join the Marines, but, and that's kind of the point of this story, is that I had taken the police exam in May and, hadn't heard back. I think I took the police exam, took the physical, and I never heard back from him again. So my father convinced me to wait until the end of the semester to join the military, which, you know, was obviously September 11th. It wasn't that far away. And I was paying for it myself, my college tuition. So I'm like, well, yeah, I'm going to get my money out of this. I'm going to finish my semester. And the week after Thanksgiving, the police department calls me and they go, "Hey, you still want to be a police officer? You still want to be a cop?" Sure. You know, the academy started November 26th. This is 2001. And I had a bunch of tests I had to get in a week, you know, cram all these, you know, back tests and mental tests and see a psychologist, blah, 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 blah. Get all that done, and I was slotted in a class of 53. I think I was the 51st. The last 3 spots of that class were all a federal grant from Bill Clinton. If you ever look back, I think it was called 30,000 Cops on the Street. It was a federal law he passed back then, and I was one of them. Not a big fan of Clinton, but it got me my job.
Thanks for the job.
Yeah, and then you know, it didn't take much comparison of the pay between, you know, police officer and, you know, military. Yeah. And you can always go back and join the military. And here they're offering me this job. I'd be a fool not to take it. And I remember talking to Mick about it. I sat down with Mick that night and I'm like, "Hey, because I was really involved in the gym, and I was like, "Hey, I got offered this job with the police department. What do you think I should do?" And Mick's like, "Fuck, you're a fool not to take it." And he's like, "Take the job," you know. So that's my would have joined the military butt story. Yeah. And then I thought I was going to wash out of the academy. I honestly didn't. I was 23 years old. Too young to be a cop, way too young. I think I was the second youngest on the department at the time. And there was, in my opinion, too young, but too stubborn to quit the academy, because the academy is a lot like boot camp. in that there's that constant stress, because our I think they call him the disciplinary sergeant, was a former Marine disciplinary sergeant, so he was very intense. And he, man, you want to talk about a guy who can really get in your head without ever swearing or putting a finger on you. But you get to go home every night, and therefore it's nothing like the military, because you get that time to decompress. But I tell you what, from that every day you go to that academy, and it's pretty intense. The bookwork is nothing like any college student can hang in the bookwork. Bookwork is actually not overly difficult. College was never difficult for me, so the bookwork was easy, and the PT was a breeze, because I was still fighting and training. The red man scenarios, what they call them, the fighting scenarios, also a breeze. I'm like, that's it. Okay, leg kick, knee strike. The big thing I would get into with him is, well, that's excessive force, throwing that knee to the body. I'm like, the fuck it is. It's like, well, I can kill him. I'm like, yeah, okay, I've never seen it, but all right, that's funny. Guys do this every weekend in the ring. Yeah. Nobody's died yet, but whatever. So I'd never shot really other than 22s in the Boy Scouts. I'd never shot a gun in my life, and I struggled with that. I struggled learning to shoot, and I struggled with the driving, oddly enough, because I like to drive fast cars. But there's a difference between driving fast cars in the city and driving precise quickly and doing these maneuvers, backing, and they call it the inside course. And there's just an ocean of cones, and you got to go through this thing and not hit any cones, not hit one. It's very stressful. Actually, that's one of the few things I had to do a second attempt at was the driving. That was tricky for me. But there were instructors, maybe not trying to wash me out, but I was the young. They knew I was so young. So they're trying to wash this guy out because they know he can't. I remember one day I showed up and I had shaved the night before. I didn't shave that morning. And the sergeant spotted it. He got up in my ass and he was just ripping me, Did you shave this morning? I shaved last night, sir. You're in the hallway getting yelled at, And he would just find reasons to induce stress. So this was his reason that day. So he tells me, he's like, Wiley, do 100 push-ups. Okay. This is back when I was fighting. 100 push-ups was nothing. So I rack out 100, like, do, stand back up. He goes, God damn, Wiley, you can do some push-ups. All right, I'm just going to yell at you. I'm not going to punish you with PT anymore. It doesn't affect you. I'm going to just yell at you. And I was like, fuck, I should have just, should have quit at like 99. But
save yourself some saliva in your face for the next few weeks.
But, by the grace of God, I got through that academy. And, there I was, 23. Working in a high crime area, and this is back in 2000. It was 2002 then. There were no body cameras, there were no cruiser cameras, there weren't even, most of the cars didn't even have computers in them. Everything was pen and paper. This was, it was a lifetime ago, and you have all this authority, but you don't really know how to wield it correctly, because that's 95% of the job's communication. The 5% that's not will get you killed if you're not good at it. But 95% of it's just learn how to talk to people correctly. And you can get by without communication skills, but you're not going to be a very good cop, and you're going to get in trouble a lot, like a lot. And it does. I don't care. You can be the world's greatest communicator in the world, and you're not gonna. You're going to struggle. You're going to struggle to learn how to do that job and learn how to wield that authority correctly. It's very difficult to learn, because there's a time and a place, to be the authoritative figure. There's a time to be laid back. There's a time to comfort victims. There's a time to, smite the wicked. There's a time to do all those things. And if you're only good at one of them, if you're only good at being the huggy-feely person, you're going to end up working at a school as an SRO, but you're not going to be good at other stuff. On the other hand, you can't be always on the attack and always on the offensive, because your job is communicating with people and getting information from them. And I made mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. Any new job, you're going to make mistakes. But law enforcement in particular, you have got to be allowed to make mistakes, because it is such a hard skill to learn. Even, you do 15 weeks of field training where you have a field training officer with you, and they help. But I mean, it's just kind of a sink or swim thing, and it's tough. And I had the advantage of not everything I did was on camera, you know, and that's just because you're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna slip up, and you got to own it. But now, you know, with these new guys, yeah, they're body camera, they're training them in the academy. Here's your body camera. You're going to wear your body camera, and you're going to train to turn it on and turn it off every scenario you do, and blah, blah, blah. Fuck. You know, and then they're going to the street, and they're still trying to learn how to communicate as a police officer. And it's not the same thing as you and I, civilians, just having a conversation at the bar, although sometimes it can be. You never forget the fact that this is a police officer, and they have the authority, and they wield that authority. That never disappears from the conversation. And learning how to communicate effectively and wield that authority correctly is incredibly difficult. It's difficult when you're not on camera.
Yeah.
So, and when you're only 23.
Right. And yeah, I'm 23.
23, 24, yeah.
Very difficult. And, you know, I didn't grow up in a wealthy neighborhood. It was blue collar. But there wasn't daily gunfire, you know. And then you're in this neighborhood where there is gunfire daily, and you're going up to houses, and there you can see bullet holes in the windows and stuff, and you're trying to operate in that neighborhood with people who've lived there their whole lives, and they have that whole life of trauma and stress that comes from living there. And here I am coming in just bearing witness to it, like a referee, and trying to navigate my way through it, and you know, help folks and police folks and catch the bad guys. Very difficult.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't grow up in a wealthy neighborhood. You know, I knew how to fight. I could get in fights. I've been in tons of fights by then, hundreds. You take some kid who's college grad and never been in a fight in his life, never thrown a punch in his life, and you're throwing him in the middle of the ghetto and saying, be a cop. They're people a lot further behind the curve than me.
Yeah. So how long did you do this, and how did you end up transitioning into SWAT?
Let's see. I realized pretty early on that the firearms thing was kind of clicking with me, and the tactics thing was kind of clicking to me, because it's just another martial art. It really is. Everything with the firearms and the CQB and the room clearing, it's just a different form of a martial art. And just like in a real martial art, there's no secret moves. Okay, there's no death touch.
What?
Yeah. There's no the Den Mach.
Yeah.
There's no death touch.
How do you practice that anyway to see if it works?
The pros just do the basics with expert timing and brilliant conservation of energy. But other than that, they don't throw the punches magically different than an amateur. They're just really good at the basics. And everything with, whether it be firearms or room clearing or whatever, it's the same thing. It's the basics, and you just got to drill them and drill them and drill them and drill them, and it's still you don't make any mistakes. So I started trying out for SWAT in, I think 2006 was the first time I could try out. Made it into the school by just a hair. And the process for that, getting onto the SWAT team, is there's tryouts. They take usually about 25 people try out, give or take, out of a department of about 800. Of those 25, there's a physical, which was a breeze for me, because I'm so amazing. Guys my size, my build, I'm about 5'8", 182. It's kind of built for guys like my size as far as the running and the pull-up requirements. If you're a big, strong, heavy-set guy, there's big monsters, brick shithouse guys who can't do pull-ups that are a hell of a lot stronger than me. So it's kind of like it's designed for guys my size. Sorry. So the shoot was my weak point, and I passed the shoot by like that. I barely passed the shoot, and so go through the school, and I just was going to the school for to get the experience. It's a 2-week school, and you're graded every day on the 2-week school. Of the 25 that try out ish, they take 10. You're graded every day at the end of the 2-week school. They have a list of 10. If there's an opening in the next 2 years on the team, they interview the next 3, but they almost always take the next one on the list. On a good year, they take 2, maybe 3. Some years they take none. And then once your 2-year list expires, you start all over, try out again. So I came in I was tied for. They said tied for second, but there was a tie for first. So technically, I was tied for third, but whatever. And I was tied with John Edwards, who really competent martial artist. We both interviewed for the same spot because they took 3 that year, and they took him, and I missed getting on the team by about 2 weeks because then another sergeant, a guy on the team got promoted to sergeant, which created an opening. And I literally got called in the office of the lieutenant, and he goes, "Hey, I don't know whether or not you're going to get on this team, this list." He goes, "Because I don't know when they're going to promote this guy. So you might have to try out again." And he goes, "Even if he gets promoted or not, I want you to take the school again just for the experience, but I don't know it's that close." And I told him, "I'm not worried because I know I'm going to get on this team." And I went from being, I'm taking this school for experience, to the next school I did have to try out again. That next school I was like, I'm hunting heads. I'm here to knock everybody down. And it's an extremely competitive school. You're talking out of a 1,000-point scale for the whole school, there's a difference between first and 10th is like 15 points. The difference between first and third is usually a fraction of a point. I came in third in that school as well by a third of a point, and I was disappointed. And the guys ahead of me were really competent guys. Everybody's competent. If you just make it to the school, you're competent. And I remember sitting there being pissed off after they announced. And I knew for a fact that they're going to take 3 guys off this list, at least 3. I knew I was going to get on, but I was still beating myself up, and we're drinking afterwards, having a debrief, at the bar. And I remember having a moment of clarity where I'm like, there are 7 guys right now who would kill to be me. Quit bitching. Quit beating yourself up and just appreciate it, because I wanted number 1. So a couple months later, got on the team. That was in May of 2009. And the rest is just operational history. We have a very busy team. We do 2 to 3 high-risk search warrants a week. It's about 130 a year.
What's that?
A high-risk search warrant.
Oh, high risk. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, basically, anytime a detective writes a search warrant, they have to do a threat assessment, and based on the factors that at play, it gives it a score, and if the score is high enough, it has to be a SWAT hit. So yeah, we do 2 or 3 of those a week. We do barricaded gunmen, and we do site security. We do a lot of stuff. We do executive protection, lots of different details that people aren't privy that maybe the SWAT team would be doing. We do them.
Gotcha.
So we're pretty busy.
Okay.
So in your day-to-day job, how often do you kind of revert back to martial arts training and all of what you learned doing that?
God, that's a hard one to, because the actual fighting on my job, and I'm literally my preliminary job on the SWAT team is I'm the first guy in. I'm called Bunker 1. I carry the shield, first guy in. So you use a lot of force as Bunker 1. You end up getting a lot of fisticuffs, if you will. But even being in that position, it's very rare. It's not maybe 1 in 20 operations, and that might be too much. And on the other side, we're a part-time team, so we get called in to do that. So on the other side, I'm a gang detective, and once again, without all the numbers and the equipment, we get called into the very dangerous stuff that, a SWAT operation is usually a planned event. We know what's going to happen. We have a briefing, and it's an orchestrated, planned event. So you can bring the numbers that you need and the equipment you need, and you stack the deck in your favor as much as you can. Whereas when it happens on the gang side, on the street, it's a rapidly evolving situation where you just have the guys that you have, and you just got to make do. And it's much more difficult. It's much more dangerous on that side of things to make it, for things to work out. And honestly, if you got to take it from the bad guy's perspective, who's he more likely to resist against? These 2 officers or these 11 armored guerrillas who just come running in the door? I mean, they know they're going to lose in this one, but in the other one, I could escape, I could win this gunfight, whatever. So that it's harder to stack the deck on the gang side. But even then, actual use of force, maybe once a month. Yeah, maybe. Sometimes more, sometimes less.
What about the kind of mental lessons that martial arts gives you?
Oh, clearly. It's there's a huge benefit there. It's kind of the comfort level with violence and executing it, dealing with it, learning to get hit and know you're okay is huge. And I think that especially, gang members, they can sense that. There's something very primal and almost pack-like in the way that they operate. And they can sense another, guy who knows what he's doing. When they call me Scar, I didn't even realize they called me that years later. It was in a rap video that one of them made. Some other detective goes, they're talking about you when they say Scar. Right? I'm like, what? Yeah, that's you. Okay. And but they, it's not always confrontational when you're talking to gang members. Sometimes you can have like a real conversation with them, especially if it's just you and them and nobody else is around to play to. And you'll get in, because they're into fitness. A lot of them are into working out, and you'll get into, I'm still a gym rat. You'll get into no bullshit conversations about how much can you bench, what do you do, how fast can you run. They'll tell you, and you'll just start shooting the shit with them. Like, yeah, you look like you work out, with it, and you just strike up conversations with them, and it's kind of surprising. You're like, God, in any other context, you and I would probably get along pretty well, but here you are. You've chosen your path, and I've chosen mine.
Yeah. Commonality with the enemy.
Yeah, all right, that's fine. Well, guys, look at this Vin Diesel-looking motherfucker over here, and I'm like, me? He goes, yeah, you big as fuck. I'm like, thank you. He goes, you're welcome. It was kind of a funny conversation I had with this gamer. This one, you big as fuck.
So what type? I mean, obviously there's training involved with your job, and if I understand right, you've actually kind of taken your training to the next level where you're training outside of your work, like with precision rifle and stuff like that. Or is that?
Yeah, I don't know. I try not to. In my opinion, nothing destroys skill faster than ego. Ego crushes skill. And goddamn, in the age of social media, there is a lot of opportunity to stroke one's own ego. A lot, between Instagram and Facebook and all Twitter space and all the bullshit. So I don't like to fucking wave my own flag of my own awesomeness. I don't like to do it. In fighting, the better I got at fighting, the more people I met that could kick my ass. And the better I get in the world of tactics and shooting, the more people I meet that can shoot a lot better than me. So I'm not a big, it is a lifestyle that you cannot dedicate yourself to 9 to 5 and flourish. You can get it done, but it really is a mindset, a discipline that you have to be all in 24/7 if you're going to be real about it, if you're going to be serious about it. I work out every day. I'm 40 years old. It's not easy. It's not easy to maintain. Selection is a never-ending process. There's a list of 10 guys right now, 9. We just picked up one. There's a list of 9 guys right now that want my spot. And in my opinion, any day that I look at that list and find myself wanting, find myself lacking, it's time to start looking at the door. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to be when the young, hungry guy jumps on the team, the new guy. You don't want him to look at the team and pick up. There's the old and the sick and the weak. That's the guy who's probably hanging on too long and should be out of here. You want to be the guy they walk in and they go, fuck, that's Rob fucking Wiley. Now his perception might not be accurate, but I'm going to do my damnedest to live up to it. Yeah. So it's every day. It's an everyday thing. Your discipline, your training. The city provides you with so many hours of training a month, but in my opinion, not enough. And if you're gonna, my life, the life of my teammates, by proxy, the life of every citizen in the city that I'm going to be, tasked to protect, is dependent on my ability to execute my skill level well. And I take that very seriously, and it's a discipline. So, Yeah, it's every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
So what advice would you have for someone, in your line of work or even just in life in general that is looking to kind of take that next step into that discipline? Where do you find that training? Where do you find what's going to make you better? How do you discover that?
Well, I tell you what, I was actually discussing this with Mick a few weeks ago, that the greatest thing that I garnished from martial arts was not how to fight. I don't really fight that much at work. It comes up and it's handy, but I'm not fighting skilled people. Straight right and a headbutt and get the job done most of the time. The greatest thing I learned from martial arts was how to set goals, work hard, and achieve them. And I don't think it matters what discipline you learn that in. I don't care if you're into tennis or wrestling or bowling. I don't care. Whatever discipline you pick up, in your younger years, preferably, and stick to it, and train hard, and measure progress and set goals. That's the skill set that I learned from it that helped me the most. So then later on in my life, when I came to the police department, I say, look at those guys, those SWAT guys, man, they're, giants. I was like, I can do that. I just have to set the goals, put in the work, and get there. And for me, the fighting and the fitness was easy. It was the shooting. I spent a lot of late nights at the range. I had a guy in my crew. I was working midnights, overnights, and he was a firearms instructor. And when it got slow in the middle of the night, we'd go down and he'd open up the range for me, and I would shoot, and I would shoot, and I would shoot. I'd have never gotten on the SWAT team without him. I probably spent 40 hours one winter learning to shooting. He'd coach me. It's a hard discipline. And it's like any other martial art. It just takes reps and time, and you get better at it.
Well, that's the ultimate martial art. I mean, that's probably why in my later life I've spent so much time trying to learn it, because doing other combat sports, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, whatever, there's no real perceived risk to me anymore because I'm pretty competent at it. But when you're on a range, especially if you're on a range with other people and you're running and gunning, like, you are constantly thinking and operating at the highest level that you'll ever get. I mean, it's easy in other activities to let your mind wander. I mean, you can go out for a run and that's great and you're getting fit and all that, but you can be thinking about all kinds of shit while you do that. But I think what I've learned from the years that I've been doing it, and especially like through these guys' help and stuff, is that your mind will never be as focused on what the next move is, and how to kind of adapt to a kind of a flowing situation as sharply as it'll ever be when you're on a range, knowing that there's absolute immediate inherent danger, even just training, never mind getting shot back at or anything like that these guys have to deal with, but just other people on the range, and you hope that everybody else is as focused as you are at that moment. And it's a rush. I mean, when I do it, I'm mentally exhausted by the time I get done, and it's fun for me to have guys like Rob and Chris put me through my paces, the whole martial arts philosophy of the student becomes the master.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun too, to kind of bow down to them as being the expert in that field, and like, just give me the knowledge.
Yeah.
Cut out the crap that I don't need to learn, and show me what's important. So it's a lot of fun.
And then we get in the ring and he kicks my ass again like I'm 14. But other than that, no, it was cool. He's come up to my range and shot at my house. And I remember watching Mick. We were doing handgun. I think we were doing 2 days of handgun because you wanted to do an executive protection class with Dan Clark.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Can you get Mick up to pistol 2 in 2 days?" I'm like, "Yeah, we can do that." And I was watching. I'm teaching Mick how to fire a handgun. And I'm watching him dissect every movement, every draw, everything, just like he would, I imagine, learning martial arts as a child.
It's the same, yeah.
And he deciphers it the exact same way and studies it, and then he's repping it. I'm just watching him work it out on his own. He's really quick student, really quick study.
Well, and, we've mentioned it before, like when we had Trevor on. Watching Trevor, you understand how much of a martial art it is, because you might see someone like walking with a gun and then clearing a room, and you're like, okay, I can tell they're doing it well, but it doesn't look that hard. And then you try to do it yourself, and you're like, I'm a clumsy idiot.
Yeah, right.
And you understand that, no, you're going to have to do those movements 1,000 times a piece to even start to gain competence.
It's the little things.
Yeah.
One of the scariest things that this guy had me do, I've been teaching gun disarms for years, but I've never actually disarmed a real gun with live rounds in there, because it just never came up. And I realized, like, man, we really, in martial arts, we train kind of fucked up. Like, it's almost like this mystical ninja shit. And like, what happens when it's real? And so he's like, all right, you remember this? Put a round in your Glock, and you're like, okay, grab the barrel. And I was like, what?
Well, not now you're sounding like it's really unsafe, but
yeah,
it was very.
It's controlled.
What it was is I was
trying to explain to me when you disarm, like, and if I manage to get a gun off somebody, that's not the end of the fight, like
if you pull a trigger on a handgun and someone has a hand on the slide, it's going to go bang, but it's not going to cycle, and it's not going to load a new cartridge into the chamber. So you have to expect that when you're doing any sort of disarm, that the gun's going to go bang once. But there's this misconception that moving slide is going to hurt my hand, and it has a lot of force to it. And so we would set it up in a controlled, safe environment on the range. Okay, grab the slide. Okay,
I'm going to pull the trigger.
Are you ready? I'm going to pull this trigger one time, bang, and then they feel that slide move, and even with just not even that firm a grip, it doesn't take much grip at all. You're going to retard the movement of that slide enough that it's not going to, cycle and put a new round in the chamber. So it sounds like really dangerous, but it's
but like
very
I've been like the move, like I've taught that move, but never with a real gun with a round in there, and then to in obviously a controlled environment, discharge a round and go, oh, yeah, it doesn't burn, it doesn't. And I think, in martial arts, we talk about bullshit martial arts. I think we touched on this with Trevor too, the whole bullshido thing. And I think in the tactical world, there's a lot of tactical bullshit too that I look at, and I just get sick. And I was like, no, dude, like you're not talking about someone just getting their pinky broken right here. You're gonna get killed. You're gonna get killed, and the people around you are gonna get killed if you teach this shit. And I think one of the things early on, luckily, is that I've been around good instructors from the beginning, to make things safe but real, so that you understand the responsibility of everything, all the way from gun ownership to how you operate within a crowd of people if some bad things happen, and you have to be the first one to go hunt the bad guy down. It's real. It's like he said, it's a lot of reps too, but whenever you can elevate how serious it is and keep the training safe, I think that's vital. And it's the same in the gym. There's that flowing rolling, then there's competition rolling, and then there's a fight. And the three of them can look like three completely different things. So anyone who's starting any kind of training to do any form of combat, whether it's just a martial art unarmed, or all the way up to studying any kind of weapon, knife, gun, whatever, make sure that you're around very qualified people who've kind of been there and done that. Because if you learn those skills wrong and you ever have to call on them, they're not going to be there. They're not going to work. They haven't been vetted and tested, and And if you're not ready for what it's going to feel like, then you've just wasted a bunch of time.
So, kind of starting to wrap up then. Rob, I guess, future. What do you think the future holds for you? How long do you want to be doing what you're doing? Or
I want to do it to the end of my career. And I've been on, this is my 18th year of law enforcement. So I got a ways to go, but I can see the end from here. I'm officially old school. You know, I have a very low serial number relative to the guys who are working right now. I knew most of the command officers when they were officers, you know. So I can see the end. And you know, I want to do SWAT as long as I can physically do it, as long as I can still be a benefit to the team. But once again, there's a point where, you know, you're going to have to face the fact that I'm too old or too broke or too injured for this shit. I would hope that's no time coming soon. I'd like to do this for at least another 10 years.
Okay.
But we'll see. I mean, maybe 7 years. I got started looking at. I'm just the first time in my life looking at how my pension works out, and if I leave now, what am I going to get, et cetera, in pension? Because that honestly that can decide it very quickly for me, especially if they made a change to the pension. It's like, well, I wasn't planning on retiring right now, but I guess I'm leaving because I'm going to lose a bunch of money if I don't. So there's that. I like to teach. I'm getting into teaching firearms and rifle and CQB and handgun. I'm a firearms instructor, state and on the department, rifle instructor. In 2016, I got into precision rifle. You know, sniper, and I don't like using that term either because that evokes visions of a military sniper, Army, Marine, and military sniping is very different than law enforcement precision rifle. The math is the same, the weapons are often the same, but I don't dress up in a ghillie suit and crawl through the mud. You know, we do a lot of overwatch protection type of assignments, and that's a new discipline for me that I just thoroughly enjoy. I love being a student in it, and I'll forever be a student in it. But I love learning it, and I want to pursue that a lot more. Maybe not become an instructor. We don't really have a precision rifle instructor per se on our department. Maybe I wouldn't mind looking and filling that role. There's just not that many guys that do it. You know, it's not a very large. The snipers in the SWAT team is known as the team within the team, is what they call it. So it's a pretty unique bunch, and everybody on that gets to that point is very talented. And it's like precision rifles, like fighting, and it's like chess. There's many levels of good. You know, you can be good and then still just get stomped by people who are also amazing. You know, and it's with the precision rifle thing, you don't really see a lot of the difference between shooters until you go deep. 100 yards, you ain't gonna see it. Even 600 yards, you're not gonna see it. 800, 1,000, 1,200. That's when you start seeing the real differences and the real skill that some shooters have, you know, attained. It's easy to feel freaking awesome at 100 yards. And law enforcement, you know, precision rifle shooting is I call it eyeballs at 80. You know, it's usually shooting somebody in the eyeball at 80 yards is actually the engagement, I believe, is like 60 is the average, 60 yards. It's incredibly rare. I could work 100 careers as a SWAT sniper and never take a shot. It's extremely rare. Primary role we do is observation. And, you know, we don't shoot deep in law enforcement, but I love doing it because it makes me better at everything. You know, if you can shoot out to 1,000, everything in gets easier. And it's that's where you develop your skill and kind of test your mettle is at the deep ranges, and I love it. There's something therapeutic about the ting of that steel. And few things are as, you know, when you're in the flow and everything's lining up right and the wind is working for you and you're just, you know, you hear that steel ting, ting, ting. It's beautiful. And it's funny because Chris Brammer, we were roommates for a while, another student at Mix, did the podcast a few weeks ago. You know, he went the military route, I went the law enforcement route, and then we came back together years later with precision rifle. And he teaches at 88 Tactical. He's a precision rifle instructor, and he took me under his wing. I was like, teach me how to do this. And he taught me, and then I got on the sniper team with SWAT. And just a few months ago, him and I went out and did our first our PRS event, precision rifle shoot, professional competition, and it was blast.
Yeah.
But I mean, you want to talk about being humbled, and we knew we would be, because everybody knows who you are. You keep it quiet, but okay, that guy's a SWAT sniper, and this guy's an Army sniper, and once again, sniper. And they're so, everybody's watching. And I remember the first thing we did was a confidence builder. It was a confidence, it was a drill. And basically, there's these 5 plates next to each other. I think the first one's 8, 6, 4, 2, and then 1 inch plate. So you're working your way down these plates. And you can miss twice. And if you miss the 3rd time, you don't get any points or something like that. So basically, you can't move on until you hit the plate. And it was the first thing we did. And here I was like the 3rd shooter to do it. And you're in a group of 8 because there's lots of shooters there, but you're in a group, like a golfing group. And you can just feel everybody watching, like, okay, let's see what this guy's about. I forget how far. I think it was like about 300 or something like that. In the grand scheme of things, what we call not that far. But the targets weren't that small. Or were
You're shooting
I think it was like 450.
A 1 inch target from 450 yards, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's out there. It's out there. So, and going down there, ting, 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 and I'm like, okay. So at this point, I can keep my head up and not, and then I got the 4th one, ting, and then you hear like kind of the grumbling behind you, like, okay, this guy's, I was just having a good day. And I couldn't quite hit that last one. I missed it twice in a row by that. And I said, I'm out. I'm good with 4. But, you could kind of hear the nod of approval, like, okay, this SWAT guy can hang.
Yeah.
But to be clear, by the end of the day, we were in the pack, but there was a lot of distance between us and the top tier guys of those, those competitions. There's some really phenomenal shooters, and they were great to us. They were really accommodating, and they gave us a lot of hints and talked to us. But I mean, it's a different world, and we love it. It's a good time.
Sounds like fun.
So I have a funny Rob story.
Yeah.
Actually, it involves my dad too. Rob said earlier on.
Colorado Springs.
Yes.
Yep.
He's talking about communication, and this story just went off. So, obviously, communication is important in his job, but as a coach, it's important too. And my dad used to come over here quite regularly when he was alive, and then he would come to fights too. And he was a fighter, never really coached, and never like meddled with my coach with me or anything like that. But he would just hang out at the gym all day and watch and talk to the fighters and stuff. And we got to Colorado Springs, and I can't remember who Rob's fighting, but he is just having an off day. And first round, he's not fucking listening to anything I say. He's not doing it. Second round, same thing. And I'm thinking, man, this kid should not be beaten, Rob. And so the end of the second round, bell goes, and we're behind on the scorecards. Like, the guy's not like beating the shit out of Rob, but the fight's getting further and further away. So my dad goes, do you mind if I talk to him? And I'm thinking, at this point, fuck it.
That does not do justice to how thick your dad's Irish brogue was.
Right. My dad's accent was very thick. So, hadn't the guy been hitting you with like tons of leg kicks or something that you weren't checking?
He hit me with all sorts of shit.
It was just like a really bad day. He was just like, wasn't...
It's also Colorado Springs and there's no air.
Yeah, the altitude.
You can't breathe.
So I tell my dad, I was like, you know what? Have at it. I don't even know how to bring this kid back at this point, I just don't want him to get hurt. So my dad climbs in the ring, sits down in front of Rob. I don't think he even took water or anything, but he goes, Rob, sit up on that stool. He goes, take a look across at that guy. And I'm watching my dad going, oh, where's this going to go? And he's like, look at that guy. Look at him. And he's like snapping Rob's head. And he's like, look, take a look at him. He goes, he is fucked. He's fucked. He's hit you with everything.
He's taggered.
He's
taggered.
hit you with everything, and you're still here. He doesn't have an answer to put you down. Now you get up and you go out there and you fucking take his head off. And he's just screaming at Rob. And I'm just like, oh shit. Like, my dad is fucking pissed, And Rob jumps up off the stool. My dad like smacks him on the back. And my dad's walking down the steps, and I'm like looking at him like, what the fuck did you just do to this poor kid? Like, you just sent him out there like to a slaughter. Rob goes out there and fucking destroys this guy, wins the fight.
I remember that the guy was hanging on me at one point, like his arms were on me, and I keep uppercutting him in the face. And I'm punching and punching, and he keeps getting heavier. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? Why is he so heavy? And I finally grab an arm, and I push up on his arm, and he flops on the mat. He'd been out for 2 or 3 punches.
Oh, wow.
So afterwards, we go to a bar later on for the after fight. And I'm like still in shock. I'm like, this is like the greatest fucking comeback ever. And so we're sitting there. I don't think you were even old enough to have a beer, maybe.
I wasn't.
And I was like, Wiley, man, holy shit. I got to tell you, that was fucking amazing. Like, what a fuck. I don't know how you did that. And my dad leans in and goes, Rob, it was my pep talk, right? And you go, Mr. Doyle, I didn't understand the fucking word you said to me. I just knew you were pissed. He like just scared the shit out of Rob. Rob didn't understand the words. Like, oh man, I better not come back to this corner without knocking this poor fucker out.
Yeah.
So yeah, communication, very important.
Awesome.
It helps if you can understand what you're being told.
Yeah.
But
Mick's dad was a great guy. I miss him. Yeah, Rob was great. Eventually, I did learn to decipher his Irish brogue, but it wasn't for many years.
Yeah.
well, you fought in Ireland too.
Yeah.
That was kind of a cool full circle for me, is because, I mean, I had like, obviously Rob would be one of like my prize students, the success stories, but we took a team of fighters to Ireland, and they fought in the National Boxing Stadium. We actually have a stadium in Ireland devoted purely to boxing, and which is where I had fought. I don't even know how many times. There's lots, not just in boxing, but in kickboxing too. So for me to go there with, some of my own fighters and have them fight in Dublin in the same ring that I'd won like my junior titles, my senior titles in, was a pretty cool thing. In fact, I think my dad actually helped corner that night.
That was a
I don't
cool
know if
time.
he helped corner, but we got him a cornerman's outfit. And he was in the corner, and he was just like a fucking rooster, chest out, like, yeah, this is my son, and this is his fighters, and
My first beer ever was a Guinness in the brewery in Dublin on that trip.
that's right, yeah.
I think I was 17.
Yeah, it's legal in
Yeah,
Ireland.
over there at 16 is a legal age.
It's legal-ish.
I think my dad told you just
Yeah.
keep an eye on
Yeah,
him.
no, I
know he's
'cause
gonna drink. Keep an eye on him.
Yeah, because I had this dilemma about, oh man, I know Rob's dad's not keen on alcohol, and shit, what do I do? And so I actually talked to him. I was like, all right, Steve, here's the deal. Like, we're going to be wined and dined, and it's a big deal, and we're going to go to the Guinness brewery, and there's going to be an opportunity for him to have a beer, and he's 17 or whatever. And he's like, well, I trust you guys that he's not going to do anything stupid and stuff like that. I don't think he did. Did you?
No, I remember the night after the fight, we go to the pub, and everybody's being great. And I lost the decision to your cousin, I believe.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
he was cool, and everybody's just great. And I'm sitting there drinking Guinness, and Guinness is not a good first beer because it's just kind of it is what it is. It's an acquired taste, so you're damn near pinching your nose as you're down on these things. And that's here in the U.S., everybody drinks their choice of alcohol. Okay, but in Ireland, you'll have 10 taps, and 7 of them are Guinness. Everybody, I mean, it's just so you drink Guinness. You either drink a pint or a half pint, which is a lady's pint, and you don't drink that if you're a guy. And as I'm sitting there and I'm drinking Guinness, and as kind of a, hey, glad you're here, welcome to Ireland, here's a Guinness, here's a Guinness, here's a Guinness. So I'm here nursing one, and I got 4 or 5 lined up. And it was a long night. I think that was the first time I ever got truly, fucked up. Inebriated was on Guinness. And it was a good time. But I mean, I'm sitting there, I got 2, and they just keep putting them down. I'm like, come on, but they're just generous people, and it was a great
bad,
time.
Though,
it was a great time.
Martial arts, you're traveling the world at age 17, having pints in a pub in Dublin
it was cool.
after a good dust up the night before.
Yeah. And we don't sing here in pubs. Over there, they sing. And apparently it's like a goddamn musical because everybody knows how to sing. And
you're expected to sing.
Yeah. And I remember because we were sitting there in the pub and everybody wanted the U.S. team to sing an American song. And we all sat there and went, we don't have pub songs here. So we're all, we don't have that rich history. We don't. And we're like, fuck, and we're trying to think of a song everybody knows. And we settled on the Beverly Hillbillies was the only song that everybody knew that we could sing. And it was hilarious.
And the Irish people knew it and sang along.
Yeah.
Crazy.
That was a good time.
All right. Well, I think we're running out of time. Any last words? Any final, words of motivation or inspiration, or just work hard?
Oh, it's I tell people when they ask me about, fitness advice and getting in shape and, what's your secret or whatever. And I say every day, that's it. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care what the discipline is. It's an everyday thing.
Awesome.
So rent is due every day.
Perfect. Couldn't have been on better words. So
no kidding.
We will be right back with the book of the week. Thanks, Rob.
Yep.
All right, so we just finished up with Rob Wiley, and that was a great interview. I was telling Rob, I'm always kind of keeping my ears open for different clips, and he had so many times in that interview where he would start saying something, and it was just so profound, and I'm just praying like, don't go off on some bunny trail, and he was so good at finishing his thought that it was just a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to editing this thing and then putting these clips out on YouTube. So today for the book of the week, we're going to go with a book that's called The Richest Man in Babylon, and it's by George S. Clason. Now, this book was written in the 1920s, and, tons of people in the financial world and really just a lot of big thinkers and leaders recommend this book as a book for learning about kind of like personal finance. Now, I'm kind of a personal finance nerd. I know a lot of people think that's a dull subject, and probably for a lot it is, but man, I love it. And this book didn't really teach me any new concepts, but it put it in a way that it just made it more sense. It made more sense, drove it home a little bit in a different way that I'm used to hearing. Now, the thing you need to know about this book is it's kind of written like it's the King James version of the Bible. It's like stories being told from these olden times, and so there's a lot of ye's and therefores and thou arts and weird stuff like that. But you can tell the book, if you're watching on YouTube, the book is pretty thin. I read it in a matter of 2 days, and I just wanted to read a couple different passages of it. There's a section in here that talks about the laws of gold, the 5 laws of gold, and when they're talking about gold, obviously they mean money. But I suppose it could work towards physical gold. So the first law of gold, and this is a really important one I wish I would have paid attention to much earlier in life, but it says, "Gold cometh gladly in an increasing quantity to any man who will put by not less than 1/10 of his earnings to create an estate for his future and that of his family." So in layman's terms, save 10% of what you make. And then another one that I thought was really great is the 5th law of gold. "Gold flees the man who would force it to impossible earnings, or who followeth the alluring advice of tricksters and schemers, or who trusts it to his own inexperience and romantic desires in investment." So what does that mean? Basically, part of what this book talks about is if you save, even if you're just earning a little bit of that money, if you're regularly saving, that eventually that's going to turn out to be a big amount. But if you try to turn, a small amount of money into a big amount of money, like by going to Vegas and gambling, by, doing these crazy investment schemes that want to, multiply your money by 100, you're more likely to lose your money. And the idea is that, in this, it says gold flees the man. So it's not as if there's a couple times he kind of refers to gold as a worker. And so if you're going to, try to make your worker do more than he's physically capable of, it's probably not going to go so well for you or the worker. So a lot of this kind of old-timey advice, it's almost as if Warren Buffett would have written a financial book back in the times of the Bible. I mean, this book, it's not a religious book. It's just written about Babylon, and it kind of sounds like it's written in the King James Version. So highly recommended. Go check that out on our bookshelf. I'll have it posted there for you. If you want to look at the workout of the week, that will be on our YouTube channel. Search Gentleman Badass. We should be the first that come up. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe. That helps us out a lot. Really trying to push those subscription numbers. And also, if you're listening to the podcast, please subscribe there as well. That all helps us. Be sure to check out thegentlemanbadass.com. That's where you're going to find the bookshelf. That's where you're going to find links to our YouTube, to our Patreon. We've got merch for sale. So get on there and check all that out. Hopefully you won't be disappointed. We've got a lot of content on YouTube, and we're going to keep adding to it. So the more subscribers that we can get, the more people watching, the more we'll be able to do with this podcast. So thanks again for tuning in, and we will talk to you next time.